I think I'm set.
That probably hurt.
Mike.
Those homemade cookies, or are they?
Those are homemade. Homemade from the Vogel Gould.
Homemade cookies.
You had to question as to whether or not a Gould cookie was homemade?
Well, Howard brought Howard was feeling a little overwhelmed because he brought it from the other side. And he saw a commercial box. So.
Gotcha. Well, guys, I'd just like to call the meeting to order.
You need a gavel.
I know. I need a gavel. I think the first thing we need to do is actually apologize to the good Dr. Mao, who is joining us via Google Plus, because we have both what looks to be a really nice pastry from Howard and really good cookies, courtesy of Sarah, which leaves Dr. Mao having nothing. So, sorry, Dr. Mao.
It's quite all right. Maybe we'll send a helicopter crew to bring it down quickly.
Deb? Does that mean
that would be worth it, actually.
Oh, good. Deb says it meets criteria. We're good. We're good.
Start cutting some trees down.
All right.
Apology accepted. Thanks.
I would actually suggest that staff put 2 cookies in an envelope and send them to Dr. Mao immediately. Do we have a motion to approve the September minutes? It has been some time. Thank you, Dr. Doynow. Dr. Vogel. And with that second, is there a vote? All affirmative. Thank you very much. Glad everybody's back. We missed last month because of the state meetings, which actually were pretty interesting, and Rich is going to be nice enough to share some commentary about that. First, let's review a little bit of correspondence. Starting in correspondence from a gentleman by the name of Dr. Wenecure. I hope I am not butchering his name. Who
no,
is...
it's something that I guess the form is
not sure what that is. He is a board-certified family practice physician. He's in private practice in Troy, and he's serving as a medical director for Half Moon Waterford. And I'm pretty excited to say that he's interested in getting involved. So I look forward to extending an invitation to him and getting him involved, as well as doing some training to make sure that he understands a little bit more about what we're doing in EMS. We have some notes from Dr. Funk, who will be spending some time later delineating some of the changes that she has put in place with Mohawk Ambulance, particularly for their interfacility program. We have a letter from John Boyd, who's the president of Ballston Lake EMS. Much to Ballston Lake EMS's credit, as you know, we've had some issues in the past with their response times and in terms of missing some calls. John's nice enough to delineate 8 calls that they missed in October. 1 was a first call, 7 were second calls, and what they're doing specifically to correct those deficiencies. So this is something that actually we get and I think is good that they have recognized a problem. They're working to correct that problem. That's excellent to know. So we'll look forward to hearing more. Thank you, John. And we have a note from the from Joe Farrell to David Manzer, the chief of the Pleasantdale Fire District, saying that they are now BLSFR. Congratulations to Pleasantdale and welcome. We'll start with there's one more thing that didn't make it into the folder, but I think is important. Voorheesville Ambulance. Tim and I reviewed a relatively lengthy letter from Voorheesville Ambulance. Discussed this also with Dr. Doynow. Voorheesville Ambulance is currently involved in some political issues involving funding streams from both the town of New Scotland and the village of Voorheesville. This is an ongoing political issue in the town itself, and I'm sure they will keep us apprised as to what's going on and how it affects the region as a whole. Dr. Mao?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, is that Dr. Mao's line? Would you do me a favor and mute your line for us unless you have something to add?
No pressure at the moment. I'm doing fine.
Would you mind muting your line for us, please? We seem to be getting
Sure,
some
not a
background
problem.
noise. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And feel free to jump in anytime. All right, report from the academic committee. Don.
All right, not a whole lot there. 2014 turnaround requirements. The only thing that was changed was we're going to require a humeral head and a tibial plateau IO as their skill requirements, just because there have been some issues with people having problems doing humeral head, and that's now available to them. There was also questioned what we would do with the new AEMTs that are out there. And they will basically do the intermediate level skills, except they won't be required to show intubation because they're not intubating. Basically, they will continue doing intermediate level protocols until 1/1/15, at which time hopefully we'll have AEMT protocols in place. Debbie was going to talk about the Mohawk ambulance formulary upgrade, so that is later on, and that was basically it.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. No motions. Any commentary from the REMSCO? Rich, Carol, anybody?
I don't think so. Our investment broker gave a financial report to us. Our investments are doing quite well, and we have a sizable cash reserve right now, so we have some money to fund worthwhile projects.
Excellent. So mandate from the council then would be for the doctors to spend money.
And I see that, yes.
That came from the treasurer, I'd like to know. Okay. And Rich, following with that, would you mind giving a quick report from the CMAC and the SEMSCO?
Sure, absolutely. One major victory, and this was more than a year in the making, something our region has had for many years, effective May 1st, 2015. Any agency in New York State providing advanced life support care at either the critical care or paramedic level will be required to possess controlled substance medications. Surprisingly, about a third of the agencies in New York State do not. But they will come to line by May 1st to 15 or decide to provide basic life support. A couple medications were added to the state formulary: norepinephrine and rocuronium. Intranasal naloxone was approved for use by all levels of EMS providers in the state. That's another project started in our region. And this I found interesting. The clarification point from Lee: the mandate that applies to Article 28 facility employees in the event of an influenza outbreak to either be vaccinated or wear a mask does not apply to EMS providers unless those providers are part of a hospital-based ambulance or if they are students doing clinical time in a hospital. There's copies of my report if anybody wants, but those are probably the more important points.
Excellent. Mary, anything to add?
Mike, just a quick question.
Yeah.
The requirement for controlled substances is going to be pretty onerous on some of the smaller volunteer agencies. Is there any provision to have them have an agreement with a supporting agency to provide those?
No. Actually, it was interesting because just a little bit of the background. This is something that's been percolating at the CMAC for many years, and obviously we did this here back in 2004, 2005, very successfully, with, I would say, great support from the providers in this region who wanted to step up. One of the things that Mark Zeke, as chair of the council, did was send out a survey to all of the agencies in the state to review their reasons for not having controlled substances if they didn't. It did make, unfortunately, an awful lot of work for staff at the Department of Health. But the information that came back was quite good. Beth was key to putting this whole thing together. But some of the comments were really important, and I read some of them to the state council. One of the comments that I remember just about verbatim was, we're a volunteer ambulance squad and run 120 calls a year. We have 9 EMTs and 2 paramedics. We are getting controlled substances because we think it's appropriate for our patients and important for patient care. My comment on that was, these are people I want taking care of me. These are people with the foresight to recognize that this is an investment that they should be making in care, and that you can't be an advanced provider without the ability to control seizures and take care of pain. Then there also were people out there that said, and one that was a commentary from a physician, I've been a medical director of an agency that does 1,000 calls a year for the last 20 years, and I've never encountered a call where controlled substances should have been used. And the giggles and blinders that I'm looking at being mocked through the room is exactly what happened with the state council. You know, this person clearly is asleep at the wheel. You know, that agency that does 120 calls a year, they have a whole lot of issues about providing quality advanced life support, the least of which is maintaining controls. And the amount of expense to implementing controls isn't that great in the grand scheme of an entire advanced life support
I
program.
don't think it's the expense, it's putting the plan, making sure that they are secured.
Right.
Having access that's secured. Not that that's difficult, but
Right.
I'm just thinking of some agencies I know, not necessarily in this area, where that in itself is going to be difficult for them to accomplish. Whereas if they had an agreement with an agency that is let's say a paid agency, that they could call when they needed, as they're doing now sometimes for ALS support, that would be a little bit.
And that may be
easier.
very reasonable for them to drop to an advanced EMT level.
Yeah, maybe.
And serve as a advanced or a
First responding.
paramedic assist program
Yeah.
instead.
And
But the CMAC was very clear that the lowest place to be for a paramedic or critical care tech level agency was going to be with controlled substances to take care of seizures and pain. So,
We're just
Mary.
waiting for the policy to appear on the webpage, but it's very succinctly worded down.
Okay.
So, I mean, there shouldn't be many questions once that comes out.
That's good.
the other thing that I think is really important that I think was made pretty clear by the Bureau is that people should work together and share policies. This idea that everybody has to find their own way to reinvent the wheel around this just doesn't make sense. You know, in the policies, for example, and procedures that are used in Clinton County, where a lot of agencies don't do a lot of calls, but they manage to maintain controls and have done that for some time since in Mountain Lakes they created this policy, can work really well. The idea really should be find out where there are policies that would pertain to you. Talk to your regional reps, because Mary knows more about the policies in the area than anybody else. Ask her what policies would work and how to build a policy that will do well. There are ways around that for everybody. So I think it ended up working out quite well. Comments from the Hawk? Anything in particular, Tim?
You have a copy up there, Doc, not much. They talked a little bit about the new patient tower at Albany Medical Center, and reviewed some of the activation codes that Albany Med utilizes in different situations and stuff, but basically that was about it.
Yeah, the alert codes that we have written down here just to share so you know what they are like if you happen to hear them overhead. There's a code pink, that's a missing child. Code white would be an imminent birth, but I think it's an imminent disaster birth more than anything else.
Or birth outside of labor and delivery, right?
Right, which is the imminent
Yeah.
disaster birth.
Yeah, right.
The code yellow, which is hazmat. Code red, fire. Code blue, obvious. Code silver, gun. All right. And then there's the code green, which is, oh shoot, we lost somebody. They're probably at Dunkin' Donuts. Go find them. All right. It's basically somebody who's not where they're supposed to be.
Staff or patient?
Great question. You know, missing person 5'11", goatee, salt and pepper hair, wearing cheaters, last seen headed in the direction of Starbucks. You know, I don't know. Code green is sort of coming into a life of its own. We'll find out where that turns to. But when you hear that one overhead, that's what it
Do you have
is.
a natural disaster code? Tornado, hurricane? There's a code D.
There's a code D. Code D. Code D. That only actually happens when Deb is working, though.
That's the way it works.
Agency upgrades. FB in Averill Park and Sand Lake. That's notification only. Pleasantdale we already talked about. significant amount of pad updates, which is really nice to see. Thank you all to each of them. And go straight to new business, Mohawk.
Easy. We are completing next week our MFI training. I'm hoping that it will be successful. We're doing simulation testing for everybody. And then hopefully within a couple of weeks, we'll have all our equipment and drugs on board and be ready to go. It's again just our critical care trained providers, and it'll be obviously 100% QA'd by me. And I'm excited for it. They seem to really enjoy the concept. They're learning well, and it's a great group of people doing it. The other things that we're doing is adding to our interfacility drug list, drugs that we've encountered and not had training on. So the first time we take staff, the second time we've learned it. Nexium was added, already approved. It's a class of drug, obviously, that's already approved, so we're just teaching our providers. Clevoprex, again, in a class that's already approved, but because it's a minute-to-minute drug, we're making it at the specialty care level only. Those are both approved and running now. Precedex, we're going to need to do some training on because it's not been a class of drug that we have, a specific class of drug that we have used before, but we're seeing it used in some of our ICU to ICU transfers. So we're going to do some training on that, and then we'll be adding that to the specialty care level for interfacility.
Great. Sam?
Deb, is the Nexium just like a drip?
Yes.
Okay, you're not expecting people to get boluses?
No. These are not drugs that we're carrying. These are just drugs that our staff, our paramedic staff, can maintain during interfacility transfer without RN staff present.
Good, okay.
Excellent. Mike, any questions, anything to add for? Nope, beautiful. Thank you very much. Traction splints, just an item of notification because we're working on these. There were a number of traction splints that had disappeared in the recent past at Albany Med, and some agencies had replaced their traction splints with hairs, at which point we started talking about what indeed were the most appropriate traction splints and would provide the best patient care. I've got a group of folks from the trauma service at the Med reviewing the concepts of traction splinting for femur fractures to hopefully make a recommendation as to what the best traction splints would be. Not for purposes of asking all the agencies in the region to run out and replace gear that they've already got, but to make a recommendation that as gear fails, times out, ends up breaking, gets lost, it get replaced with something that will provide the best possible care, which would basically be linear traction with no distraction of a lumbar or pelvis injury. Sarah?
At the trauma meeting last month, they also mentioned that they have a plethora of backboards at Albany Med that aren't being picked up that they're going to throw away.
Yes,
So-
please, if anybody happens to want a backboard, come to the Med and get one.
Or 10.
In fact, take several.
They make
Apparently
really
there
good
were 70
sleds.
at one point.
I think that was probably about right. I would recommend actually, if you're going to use them for sledding,
You need a slider
The
underneath the
plastic
front.
ones are better?
Yeah.
the plastic ones are much better. We do have some wooden ones there. We actually had a Thomas C. Halfring there for a while, which was entertaining to see and nice from a historical perspective. And
Next to your
the well, and I'd like to point out that the backboard that we have had at the department that came from the farthest away was actually an old New York City EMS backboard. And to the best of my knowledge, since that agency has not existed since 1996, I'm not sure where that one came from.
Kind of
Hey there,
illustrates
how are you?
Native American trade.
What'd you say, Dennis?
Coming up the valley.
Oh, yeah, right.
Talking to somebody else.
Oh, okay. And since we have no idea where it came from or where to return it, since the agency doesn't exist anymore, I took it myself. So that one is now sitting in my office just for entertainment. So. And in case I decide to go sledding. Rotterdam EMS. Who would like to chat about Rotterdam EMS?
I can speak to it.
Please, Dean.
Okay, well, Rotterdam EMS is currently a BLS transporting agency that provides care for the town. Their CON is for the town. And over the course of time, the town has looked to make their system more efficient. We've gone through this in many different versions and degrees of intensity over the last 20 years. about 7 or 8 years ago, we did a study. We actually commissioned a study and paid a lot of money for it. And they had recommended that we merge the fly car paramedic system, because this is a tiered system at this point, into the existing ambulance service, which is a BLS transporting agency, and make one service and save the entire budget from the town and putting it all into one organization. And then that study went dormant and no action has been taken. Now this year the town is looking again to save money in their budget, and the one line item that they've removed from the budget is the paramedic program, which leaves us some different opportunities to look at how we're going to provide paramedic service for our town, for the people of our town. And the best, or the most recommended system was to merge the paramedics with the ambulance as stated in that study. So we are actually in the process of bringing all that stuff together. And this upgrade request is exactly what that is. It's bringing the paramedic level service to the BLS agency, upgrading them to the paramedic level, and we're going to absorb all of the town paramedics into that program. And so that is basically what you see for the study. Now, there's lots of bulleted points, and I don't know if you think you want me to go through every single bulleted point.
Go through a couple of the key ones.
Some of the key points, I think, are medical director, ALS coordinator, what we're going to do for equipment and controlled substances. Dr. McHugh is going to be our medical director. He is all signed on. We have talked a couple times here and making plans to have, we're probably going to meet a couple more times with the paramedics. However, he is aware of all the paramedics that are on the staff, and he has signed off the credentialing document, so they would be put online as soon as our upgrade is complete. I will be serving as the ALS coordinator for the time being, and this is going to obviously be a fluid thing where we're going to find the right staff to fill all of the right roles. I'm going to fill the role of ALS coordinator for the time being because I'm the one who has kind of spearheaded this project. Yet to be determined who the new ALS coordinator will be. As far as equipment goes, we have ordered and taken delivery of 2 LifePak 12s with capnography. They are sitting in the office waiting for the service people to come and program them. They're fully operational. We're ready to go. We have equipment like IO gun, IO drill thing. We have our bags. We have almost all the equipment that we need. The last thing that we need to do is place an order for some more medication and a few supplies that we can't get until we've actually gone ALS. So we are well on our way. In fact, I'm hoping to place this last order tomorrow and take delivery of all of our last supplies that we need early next week and be able to begin operations soon. And that is pretty much everything in the bag. Is there any questions?
Dean, how many rigs are you going to have?
We have 4 ambulance. We are going to staff 2 ambulance at all times, and they will always be a paramedic ambulance.
And how many medics are you planning to hire? Are you planning to hire them all full-time or do part-time?
We are doing both, hiring part-time and full-time. This is one of the challenges that the police department has had with staffing is they have a certain set number of part-time positions and full-time positions because of union regulations. We do not, the ambulance service does not have that constriction. We can hire and as many people as we need and to make the system work. So if, whatever the combination is that works best, that's what we're gonna do. Right now, we've hired 26 paramedics, all of them on a part-time basis, some of them committing to full-time hours. And in January, we're going to look to solidify exactly how many full-time positions we're going to need long-term and how many part-time, or what works best. We're not saying we want this type of system. The system that we want is the system that works. We're looking at every opportunity to make it as seamless and flawless as possible. We want our providers to be successful. We want to take great care of sick people, and we want to do it at the best prices possible. So we're looking at it all and trying to make everybody happy, and it's been quite the journey.
Have we received formal notification from the current ALS provider in the town that they are no longer providing that care? Like, have they turned over officially by notifying this committee?
They have not officially notified anybody that they are stopping their service. However, they have notified their staff that they are stopping their service. And so we know that there is an end. They are planning an end, they just don't know what that date is going to be. And therefore, there's been no notification. I can't speak on behalf of the town. However, that is the process that's going on with the town right now.
So wouldn't it be premature for us to approve a second ALS agency for that region or for that municipality without having already known that there's one that's no longer going to be there? Would that be an appropriate first step to hear officially from the town police department that that ALS agency is going to not be effective this date? Then we would hear who's going to take that over, and is it appropriate for another CON process to happen if there's going to be a new agency or an agency that's covering a different level of service?
It's not a new agency. We're already providing the service, and we're just going to increase our level of care to the paramedic to make the system more efficient. As far as the date of when we begin and when they end, we are hoping for a very smooth and seamless transition. So we are hoping to have a duplication of service for a short period of time, where we have both the paramedic on the ambulance and the paramedic in the fly car, and have a smooth transition in that manner. I know that for the month it may be, or 8 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it's going to be, could be a little bit more expensive than necessary. However, I think it's a small price to pay to make sure that there are no kinks in the system.
And we did this for Bethlehem. I mean, Bethlehem has a CON for ALS care, even though the sheriffs provide ALS care.
You could also do it contingent upon the fact that the one agency will no longer, contingent upon date certain that the one agency is not going to do ALS anymore.
Can I just clarify one? It's not really a CON action. We're not asking for a new certificate of need. What this is an agency upgrade, which is done at the Remac, local Remac level. They're two entirely different animals, and I just don't want to see the two get confused because there are so many CON actions that are going on in the region.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Thank you. Mary, has the state received formal notification? I know the state is...
We are aware of what is going on. We received unofficial notification. I don't want to say in Rotterdam's defense, this is largely a political action, and nothing has been set forth firmly yet. They're 90-some-odd% sure is what I was told that this would happen, but nothing has officially come through to us yet.
On the police department side of it, I know that we are beginning the process of eliminating and liquidating all the supplies and the assets and those types of things, considering where certain assets can go and how to repurpose vehicles and those types of things. So the writing on the wall would be, this is really going to happen this time. And to be honest, all these times that it comes so close to we're going to move in this direction and then we back off, we really just need to make this happen, make the system more efficient, and stop wasting everybody's time and money revisiting this over and over again. It's the best thing for the residents. It's the best thing for the town budget. And we just need to push forward and not be, and I say that as far as the system goes, the system needs to progress.
Well, speaking of the town budget, Dan, just a quick question. I don't know if you've had any long conversations about this, but they need to be held. What's happening with all the equipment that was purchased with town tax money or grant money to serve the residents of Rotterdam? Is that equipment all going to be transferred to Rotterdam Ambulance, Rotterdam EMS, or are there other plans for that?
The town has not committed to a full merger of the system, meaning they have not committed to providing us with the assets currently in the EMS system on the ALS side, the police department. So their monitors and their medications and all of their supplies, they are looking to sell and liquidate it and bring the money back to the town budget, and they are not going to be donating that to the ambulance service. We are going to look for the things that have been donated and granted to the organization to be kept in the functioning organization, or the resulting agency because that is what the intent was. There's like a monitor that was donated to the program at no cost to the town. The intention was to make sure that there was enough equipment in the town, and that really shouldn't be sold off to the highest bidder. It should stay with the town people to provide service for those people, equipment for those people. And so we're hoping to contact all the key people that were part of donating that. You know, the other things are like the remote modems, and there's a few other things that have been donated for use to serve the town. And we're hoping that they will remain in town.
Also speaking on the budget side, will REMS continue to receive town subsidy for that agency? Or is that going to come out of the budget as well?
REMS has never, I shouldn't say that. REMS has not received town money in 3 years?
2 years.
2 years. So a couple years ago, the town decided to stop funding us, stop subsidizing us, really not funding us. They subsidize us. They no longer subsidize us. They no longer provide us the discount on the fuel and the tax break on the fuel, those types of things. So we are completely independent financially of all those things. And as many of you will recall, several years ago, there was a time when Rotterdam EMS was not financially solvent. They were really a organization that lived day to day. And over the last 2 years, we have had to do a lot of searching and reevaluating our organization. We've had major reorganization and restructuring of the board of directors, of our management structure, the way we hire people, the way we schedule people. And that has resulted in a huge turnaround financially in the stability of the company. We went to being way over our heads in debt, and today we're debt-free, with the exception of a regular payment we make for the ambulance. You know, you're always going to have a mortgage payment on the ambulance. Our buildings are debt-free. We don't owe back debt to anybody. We are 100% current on everything.
I'll make a motion that we upgrade their current status from BLS to ALS.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very reasonable. Very reasonable. Second? All the way in the back, Dr. DeValley. Thank you. Any further discussion? John?
I applaud Dean for bringing this forward at this point, and I got to tell you, purely from a selfish reason, it kills me when we get these requests for upgrades to CONs at the last second, when invariably there's a meeting going on and we have to cancel our meeting, this meeting, and we cannot properly debate in the right forum. And it's great that, in fact, he's trying to be a bit proactive about this. He's perceiving a need and wants to cut it off at the pass, so to speak, before all of a sudden there's an actual lapse in coverage that goes on for 2 or 3 months. Or worse yet, we have to have some stupid email debate about the merits of the application. So I think this is, in fact, an entirely appropriate forum. At the same time, we are not the town of Rotterdam. We don't have interest in specifics to what they do relative to their budget and their organization, but I think that they are doing wrong by their citizens and by our organization by not coming forward with definitive plans. In fact, they have not. They need to tell the folks within the town of Rotterdam and Rotterdam EMS what their plans are, when those plans are going to go into effect, and then we need to act accordingly.
Do you propose we do anything, or just commentary?
Just commentary.
Ken?
Are you guys also looking to carry narcotics?
We will carry narcotics, however, we can't begin that process until we have the upgrade. We do have a narcotics plan ready to go, though, so the day after this is approved is the day we start on the narcotics program.
Any other commentary? All in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? One abstention from a taxpayer. Motion carries. Go get a controlled substance plan.
We will, thank you.
Make it work.
All right, a few other things. First, I had had a few long discussions. The transfer of our intermediate providers to the advanced level is something that was required to occur for the middle of next year. In talking to the other medical directors responsible for the collaborative protocol regions, it will be a date that we cannot meet with a reasonable new set of upgrades to the protocols. I had a conversation with the director of the Bureau of EMS and asked her whether or not it would be possible for us, by motion from this committee, to initiate a new set of protocols that will take place on 1/1/15 and through the year 2014 for advanced EMTs to practice up to the top of their scope of practice within the intermediate protocols, and intermediates to continue to practice until 1/1/15, in which case they would stop practicing and no longer exist because the advanced EMT would take over. She said that was very reasonable and something we would be able to do from a Remac level. So I actually bring that forward to you as a motion, which is that we allow intermediates and advanced providers, advanced EMTs, to practice at the intermediate level with our current protocols up to the scope of practice of the advanced EMT. Advanced EMTs, for example, are not allowed to intubate. They are allowed to use supraglottic airways. So they will be able to practice at the intermediate level except for intubation until 1/1/15, in which case the new advanced protocols will be in place and advanced EMTs only will move forward from there. Was that clear enough with that?
And just, I don't know if you want to put that in there, the tactical AMTs will be able to do needle decompressions.
Tactical AEMTs would be able to have their agencies would be able to apply to do needle decompressions. That actually exists now through the CMAC. Yeah. Are there any other questions about that? All right, second to the motion. Thank you, Don. All in favor? Any questions? Any opposed? All right, great. Thank you, everybody. I'll write a letter to that effect. I would like to let everybody know that there is actually a set of advanced EMT protocols that have already been written along the style of our protocols, which actually mirror ours very nicely. We're going to watch and see how those work over the course of the next few months and then work from those. That's the Western region. They actually looked like they would end up being very nice. Will actually connect us to Western New York quite effectively. They adopted basically our paramedic protocols just about as written and then built this section in the middle. So we're going to see how that goes. Hopefully I will have copies of those to circulate relatively soon. And the last piece of new business that I wanted to bring was something that I was going to task staff here with doing, and it follows with the mandate we just got from Treasurer Brandt from the council, which is to spend money, which is I'd like to task staff here with reviewing the ImageTrend product. ImageTrend is working on what's called the State Bridge, which takes all electronic data, puts it in one place so that it can all be looked at as one. Unfortunately, by the time it gets to the state, all the protected health information has been stripped from it. There is the ability for the region to purchase what's called a regional bridge, which would take all of the data from EMS charts, ZOL data systems, ESO data systems, IPCR, review all of that, take all of that data and the NEMSIS data points that exist within it, and look at all of that data as a group before the PHI is stripped and it goes to the state. So we'd be able to use it for quality assurance review at the regional level. Something that's being done in the Susquehanna region. There are a couple of other places that it's being used. But I'd like staff here to explore what that expense would be and how effective that would be. Because at this point, we're at a place, this body needs data. We can talk a lot about the idea of which pressor we should be using as a region, but if we don't know how often the pressors are being used, we're really kind of making decisions in a vacuum. We need to know how the decisions that we're making here are affecting care in the street, and we need to know how often our decisions are actually impacting patient care.
Mike, is there any way we can get outcome data? Because that's the part that's missing with all this. Is there any way to connect that?
Sort of. So the state has actually been valiantly attempting to connect the ImageTrend State Bridge to Sparks, and then be able to connect EMS input to hospital discharge output. Unfortunately, for a whole lot of different reasons, not the least of which is the EMS provider's interest in putting in the last four of a social security number is very low. X's and O's don't actually lead to random patient or anonymous patient identifiers that can connect patient records. So unfortunately, they have been much less successful than they would like so far. It's something that would serve from a hospital dashboard, though, for you to be able to get into the regional bridge and pull off all of the calls that go to St. Pete's, or me get in there and get all the calls that go to Albany Med. And that at least would provide us with a way to link these things when someone asks you, hey, Don, what happened to? We'd be able to connect these things much more efficiently. So it'll provide some of that, not all of it yet. And then Image Trend may provide a more consistent place for all of our EMRs to go in, or EHRs to go in and pull off the PCRs and pull them into our records. But that has yet to be seen. Certainly depending on our friends from Siemens in Albany Med's case. Silence across the room.
Sounds like we're a reasonable thing to find out, see what it costs.
Thank you.
I think it's more than reasonable. For us to survive using our data, we cannot meet the diluted cost. We have to be able to separate out our cohorts because the way our region functions is so different than so many other regions. If we dilute that,
Right.
it's going to be worthless.
I agree. And I think it's particularly important as we all operate within the same body of protocols to look and see how outcomes are different in other parts of the state. If we can ultimately get drilled down that far, Bruce, I think that would be really important.
The other thing I'll make regarding your comments, looking backwards is great for a mental professor, but I think also we have to think about our education. Our region still functions a lot on habit, and if we tend not to do something, we tend not to do it continually. I think if we adjust our education, that may change. So things that just looking backwards is what we need to do. We need to look backwards and look forward with education and change some of our practice habits.
Good comments. Any other thoughts from anybody? If there are no other items of new business.
So moved.
Nice try. Sarah.
Two things. First of all, I know you mentioned the Voorheesville ambulance issue earlier. Aside from empathizing with them, does this body have anything to do with that?
No.
I didn't think so.
Nothing at all.
The other question I had that Jeff Burns wanted me to bring up is whether or not we are going to need to increase our supply of Narcan on the ambulances based on new drugs that are out there for overdosing on. Do we carry enough? They're looking to increase it in the hospital in each of the crash carts.
We haven't seen anything yet. Acetylfentanyl, which was quite popular for cutting heroin for a little while. I've never quite understood the idea of the economics of drug dealing, but I guess if you kill a couple people, it makes it more popular with everybody else.
You kill, I suppose.
I accept the guy that get killed, right? You know, I'm not really sure this would work in the Walmart model, but that in particular required a little bit more, but not so much more that we needed to increase. Let's watch it.
How much are we carrying?
Let's watch it. Peter, Joe, what is it? 6, right?
Okay, so in the hospital, for some reason, we're only able to get our hands on the .4s. So we need a lot of those to equal what we're carrying in the ambulance.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully you're still able to get the
Six should be
2 and 2s for ambulance restock.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, I think so. We just need to steal the ambulance restock.
We've got both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, every time I've found a problem, it usually ends up that the in-hospital stuff and the EMS formulary stuff sometimes gets mixed. So it usually ends up shaking itself out in the end. But we haven't had any cases. If we look at the data that we've got from the intranasal Narcan program, about 2/3 of the patients that got intranasal Narcan reversed with a single dose of intranasal Narcan. 1/3 required another dose, either IV or intranasally, but nobody required more than that for the overdoses that that they took care
And
of.
those were 2 milligram doses.
And those were 2 milligram doses. Obviously, within the nose, you have absolutely no idea how much the patient really gets. The optimal dosing per nair is probably a half an ml, and we're just going with 1 because the math is easier. Give half the Tubex. But you have no idea what's being absorbed in the hypopharynx. You have no idea what's being absorbed across the nasal mucosa. The actual pharmacology is really interesting, and Michael and I have been talking about this a little bit in relation to a project in Ohio where the FDA actually was requiring pharmacokinetic data on intranasal administration in order to approve a IM-IN test. And really, from my perspective, my answer to it was, it's not clinically relevant. Can we just move forward, please? Thousands of people reversed this year with intranasal Narcan. We don't need to do anything else. But the FDA wanted pharmacokinetic data, which doesn't exist, and I don't think it's going to anytime soon.
Kind of silly.
Yeah, kind of silly, and that's from the pharmacist. So, not going to happen. So, looks like it's working so far, but keep us posted if anything turns up that you see before I do. Let me know. Certainly, the other interesting thing with the intranasal program is about a third are illicitly used or inappropriately used prescribed opioids. The other 2/3 have all been heroin. So heroin's out there, and frankly, it looks like that is continuing to go up, being driven in no small part by iStop.
Yep.
If you can't get it by walking into your favorite neighborhood emergency department and saying, I'm allergic to, you got to get it from somewhere.
Yep.
So, anything else? Joe?
Just wanted to
Please.
give notice of intent of Clifton Park to expand services to specialty care transport to service our operating certificate, just because we have an interesting dynamic with a standalone emergency department, or soon to be standalone emergency department. And we've had.
We'll refer to as the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week emergent care
Really
center
thorough
at exit
workup
9.
Urgent care center.
Yes.
MRI here.
We've had some acuity that's coming out of there, and I think at this point it would be smart for us to branch off into a specialty care transport arena. So my intent is to submit a plan next month at the December meeting for review and approval, and hopefully start providing a CT with a select group of folks starting on 1 January, because there's a need right now, and follow the plan to spin up the rest of the folks over the course of probably another 6 to 8 months training program for the rest of our personnel. I would love any feedback or questions or concerns, so that the packet that I put forward can be.
Anything in particular anybody wants to see? I think it sounds like an exciting program, so we've seen how it goes. Anything?
I would just suggest that you may not want every one of your providers to operate at that level.
Or not. I'm anticipating, we have right now 20 people enrolled in a critical care orientation program. That's an online program through the Association of Critical Care Nurses. I anticipate probably a 50% washout rate between the initial training program and our final 8-month testing. So if I stand up 10 providers, I'd be surprised.
That may be about what we're seeing too, from the people who enter to the people who come out successful.
That's about what we're looking at. There'll be a select group of folks that will be included in the packet next month who would like to be able to start specialty care transport almost immediately, because there is a need. But those folks are all credentialed critical care or SCT providers in the region already, and most of them are dual-hatted nurse medics. That's just as a bridge until I can spin up the rest of the staff.
Curious, the dual-hatted providers, are you going to have the ability for them to operate as a nurse, therefore be able to move
We're investigating that.
blood, et cetera?
We're investigating that. I think I think there's a need.
Yeah.
And I think it's there. So I'll put the carpet over us.
That would be exciting. Here, have a blood bank?
Shortly.
Imagine our surprise when we got
So
that.
not only is it overdone work, it's overdone treatment too. We weren't planning on that, and they dropped that little nugget in the lab.
Sounds like we need a helipad there, a helicopter. That could be someplace you could look into.
Clifton Park.
Yeah, well, Station 1 sitting right there.
So I'm gonna park
Good
my
too.
ambulance.
I like that.
I'd go with the ambulance.
I got to tell you, that was good. It's been at least 4 months since Deb has had the opportunity to mention blood transport. So we will note that Rich brought us a report from the SEMSCO
That didn't say
and the
anything about
CMAC
blood.
that said absolutely nothing about DOH policy change to allow blood transport by EMS providers.
It's actually one of the reasons why we're looking at utilizing nurses, specifically because of that obstacle.
Gotcha. That, by the way, has been mentioned again at STAC as well. The idea that, particularly from our rural hospitals, the idea of being able to transport blood products is profoundly important to the patients of New York State and has gone nowhere.
We actually have, LifeNet has, we're in the process of applying to be able to actually carry blood on the aircraft up in the North Country. because
And initiate it?
Many of our flights are over an hour long, and there's nowhere to stop. So
Yeah, there is Clifton Park.
Yeah, right. Maybe we can refuel there too.
I'm seeing like a little airport going in there.
Included in the SCT is also an MFI program. The whole iteration training program will be laid out in the packet.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Anything else, anybody?
Just one thing I'm going to mention for the training directors and the medical directors. As you all know, New York State has been pushing sepsis, and they have not put out our metrics, but we can pretty much guess what those metrics are going to be. And we have a sepsis protocol. We tend really not to pay a whole lot of attention to it for hospitals that care. And I think that the training directors and the medical directors need to look at that. It does need to be updated eventually when we get around to doing our protocol updates. But for right now, it's good enough. We just have to start filling it out and using it. I think probably the most important piece of that is the recognition piece. And give hospitals early notification. Because if you really want to hit your marks of your antibiotics within 1 hour, get your fluids on board, you really help the patient by getting the fluids in. So as part of your training program, you might want to just bring that up and brush the dust off.
Good point. Dean, do you want to talk about the quality initiative from that?
Well, the QI committee met earlier today, and one of our studies is going to be a sepsis, recognition of sepsis and treatment. And so we are definitely going to go in that direction. It's probably the second QI study that we're going to do. And
This goes to why it's so important for us to buy that regional system, because there's a whole bunch of people with no access to information. And it's much easier to have access to the information than send you a letter and hopefully you get why you charge them. Tell us what you're doing.
so we've come back to we need to spend money.
Right back to spending money. There you go, Rich. All right. If there's nothing else, Dr. Bosco, you were saying?
No, I'm not doing it.
You're not doing it? Really?
Not gonna.
I already put you in the meeting minutes.
All right.
Whether you do it or not, you did it.
Seconded by Dr. Vogel. All in favor? Thank you all.
Take cookies home.
Yeah, I'm not bringing anything home.
Except for 2 that are going to get sent to Dr. Mount.
Right.
Pretty stingy. I'd send them.
I emailed you.